welcome back to the Messed Up Movies Podcast, Filmmaker Friday edition. Quick business before we get started here. Please go to misfitparade.com. Subscribe to the newsletter there to follow the journey for making Mr. Cream Jeans hidey hole. Follow us on TikTok now. We're there, Misfit Parade. Misfit Parade YouTube. Make sure you subscribe there. 5-star ratings, reviews. Messed Up Movies Podcast has its own Patreon. The best place to get all the good news stuff and some exclusives. The new Black Mirror season's coming out. We're going to be diving into all of that. But you are here today to hear from a filmmaker friend of ours, Nolan Mihail. Welcome to the show.
How's it going, guys? It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time. So, he's got the Looky-Loo poster.
He's got it.
And not only a poster, a wearable mask. If you are into arts and crafts, you can make that happen for yourself.
It's kind of like at the end of, spoilers, at the end of The Substance. I just cut this baby right out.
There you go.
So walk around.
Yeah, he doesn't need strings. He staples right to his skull. So that's why he's just a badass guy. All right, Nolan, would you like to start off by introducing yourself, the project you were working on, and where people can find your stuff online?
Well, sure. So my name's Nolan Mihail. I'm primarily a screenwriter. I wrote Looky-Loo. I'm currently involved in production on Looky-Loo Part 2. I'm also working on a project with Heath called Black House. It's very exciting. This sort of art house, kind of black and white horror film. And I'm currently writing. I don't know if I can necessarily say anything about it, but I am currently writing like a commissioned screenplay. It's probably not my place to say anything yet. Since
Sure.
Yeah. But
busy man. This guy stays busy. He's working.
It's been very busy start to the year. Yeah.
Well, that's always good for a screenwriter. Those drought periods are what you got to worry about.
That's right.
We had your friend Jason on, Jason Zink, the director of Looky-Loo, and we talked a lot about Looky-Loo and the process of making a found footage horror film, right? And kind of the mechanics of how you guys went about producing and shooting the movie, right? So that it felt more authentic to what would happen if a serial killer actually was filming these murders as creating his own film, essentially. Yeah. I thought it would be interesting with you as the writer. It feels like one of those scripts that is so sparse that doesn't have the crutch of dialogue to eat up page, right? That's like the screenwriter's go-to friend. Yeah. How did you approach writing a found footage film? I think so many of us watch found footage and don't actually read the screenplays to see how they differ from a normal screenplay.
So I think we probably broke every single screenwriting rule that there is. We really might have. First of all, it wasn't in any kind of like standard format. I didn't use Final Draft or anything like that. It was like a bulleted list. Like sort of the centerpiece was like maybe a 20-page bulleted list of like, this is the stuff that he's going to do. And it wasn't even in the order that it ended up being edited together in the film.
Right.
And then prior to every single shoot, I would write like a 6 or 7 page, like detailed, like super detailed synopsis. But again, there's no dialogue. And like I didn't really have anything to compare it to. I'd never read anything like that. And I don't write scripts like that. So, or at least I didn't. And so I was kind of making up, we were kind of making up the rules as we went. I do think that we probably did break every single rule, though, to be honest.
Well, rules I always feel are made to be broken, right? That's the whole point. You learn the rules so you know better how to break them. And again, I think a lot of people get really beholden to screenplay structures, styles, rules. At the end of the day, your job is to give a director and a production something they can fucking make, right?
Yeah.
And with something like this that has that kind of more novel approach, was it as a person who's written other screenplays, did you find this version more difficult or more freeing in some ways to not be beholden to those kind of save the cat mechanics?
Yeah. It was freeing in the sense that it was a relatively, like, once I was actually writing, it was relatively quick to write. It was more work in the sense that I had to really do a lot of research, into like, basically like how is this character going to behave? Right. How would he actually behave? What would he actually do? So I ended up just doing a stupid amount of research into like true crime, the serial killers and criminal profiling and all of this stuff that normally wasn't really my cup of tea. But they always say, write what you know. I think you could also say, just know what you write. You better figure it out.
I was going to say, are we about to get a reveal? Like, I just like being in people's closets. It's
I actually think this is a really interesting point to talk about, because now that you mention it, Nolan, it is clicking with me, having just in the brief amount that we've worked together. One thing that I do really appreciate about you is that you are so prepared and researched and studied. And that shows up on the page. And that's something that Griffey does really well too. I mean, the stuff that he's researching is a
little different. Yeah, we're probably both on lists, just different lists.
Yeah, we're on sister list.
But, the there is definitely combined somewhere. Yeah,
there is an effort regardless on no matter what you're writing, whether it's about crazy dick monsters or serial killers. I think you guys both have that quality, and that's something I feel like isn't often talked about when we're writers are, at least screenwriters are, discussing their craft.
I mean, I think it depends. It depends largely on on sort of the genre. If it's something more whimsical, like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Have fun with it. If you're clearly trying to make something like that's camp, don't worry about it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. But like the script that I'm working on right now, it's fairly camp. But I still had to Google, like, hey, if someone's doused in grain alcohol for like several hours, are they still flammable after several hours?
Yeah.
It turns out they are not. But I had to Google that. I had to find out that information. I just couldn't.
Yeah. I used to be a writer for a TV show called 1,000 Ways to Die. And that was my 40-hour-a-week job, was just, could this kill you? And then write a funny character to fit said scenario. Yeah. How much spray tanner does it take for a bed to combust, right? That kind of thing.
I watched that show quite a bit. That was like a guilty pleasure of mine. So congratulations.
Yeah, it was a guilty pleasure of a lot of people, man. It was a fun gig.
Morbid, entertainment, I suppose. Yeah.
That's right. It was when men could be men on TV for everyone to see. I think that was the motto, right?
Maybe.
It was some kind of like man, TV? Fireworks, trucks, tits kind of advertising. I can't remember. I'd like to go here, right? Because we're kind of talking now. So Heath and I work very closely together, developing stories and this and that. How have you found, because you work with Jason, right? We interviewed Jason, and he talked about, he's co-writing this project you guys got conscripted for, right? That sounds like military service. That's not the right word. Commissioned, that's the right word. You were like conscripted into it. But how have you found your writing changes when you have such a close direct relationship with the director, let's say, so from such an early idea state of the project?
So the way that Jason and I usually work, we'll have usually like a meeting beforehand and just sort of have a discussion about like, certain things that like a vibe that we're kind of getting, to use the parlance of our times, the vibe. So we look into that first, and usually it's me putting the words on the paper for the first draft. But I check in with him, and I'll send him really long emails, or I'll call him and I'll need to talk to him about it. So he's sort of, he's in an editor capacity, but it's also, it's a lot more than that. Because with an editor, I'm not going to be like, what do you think should happen next? You know what I mean? So like I think we work very, very well together on this particular project. I'm furnishing sort of the first draft. Then we're going to work on that first draft together to sort of clean it up. And then we're going to turn it in and pretend like we didn't have to clean it up. It just came out that clean.
That's my favorite thing, is to send like the 10th draft of something out and be like, first
draft one. Yeah.
Knock this out over the weekend. I was busy, but I got to.
Then you apologize. You're like, I know it's a little sloppy. Yep.
I know my punctuation's low. Yeah, no, that's like the Heath actually has been mad at me before, because I've been holding out on one script at least for about a year now, because I don't want to let him read the actual vomit draft, because I haven't had a time to make it like a beautiful singing thing yet. But But let me ask you this, because me and my writing partner find often that the actual writing to us feels like the easiest part usually, right? Like the going back in and like we'll take a scene, right? And in the vomit draft, we're saying all the shit that we want the scene to say. Then you have to go back and we kind of do a tandem where we sit on the call together and write through each scene line by line. In that is where we try to come up with, we do our scene breakdowns of what are we trying to actually say. And then the kind of magic, I think, in a lot of screenwriting is, which no one will believe that we do this with the scripts we're writing right now. But it's how do you say the thing without saying it in a sentence, right? Like without dialogue saying exactly what the fuck you want, how do you say this? That, I think, is actually easier and more fun sometimes. Yeah. How do you and Jason work through, like one of the things we struggle with the most is that kind of, what do we want this story to be? How do we meld two minds into the vibe, as you're saying, right? So when you guys see things differently, or let's say you hit a point in the script where you're staring at two directions, have you guys come up with a way that you kind of work this out if you feel diametrically opposed in that moment?
Armed combat. No.
There you go. Dude, that's a good one.
We haven't really encountered too many. Like, I don't think we've ever encountered a situation where we couldn't talk our way through it and come up with a compromise. I think you just have to be you have to be one, willing to sort of defend your choice, and you should be that way no matter what as a screenwriter. As you're putting it on the page, you have to be like, okay, well, am I okay with this? Because I'm going to have to say why this had to be in there. And you also have to be, with a partner, you have to be open to calling yourself on your own bullshit too. So, if he says like, hey, no, this doesn't make any sense and here's why, I have to be open to that. I have to be like, you're right. So I think that's a lot of, work you have to do on yourself more than anything else. Well,
it's the benefit of a writing partner is you have someone to help you get through finding that bullshit faster. Yeah. The other problem is I think sometimes it feels so creatively unusual. Yeah. Right? Because you're starting a new idea and you're like, I want to fill this thing with my fucking ideas. And you're like, wait, that guy's got ideas too? I thought he was just here to do secretarial work. Well, and sometimes those become the fucking thing.
And sometimes it'll start with, I've got a script that I wrote with Jason that started off with a full outline that he'd like written pretty much the entire outline. And a lot of things got changed. I would say like a ton of things got changed, but it didn't get changed just like unilaterally. We discussed it, and I think we both would probably agree we're really stoked on that one as well. That's one that we're not actively in production on, but he may have discussed better halves with you guys. But
he did mention it. I don't know that he mentioned it on the show, but we did talk a little bit about it.
That's a funky little script, but it's we're I think we want to do that one. We really want to do that one. We've talked to Heath about this as well. But we just got a soft spot.
It's an awesome script. I'd love to see you guys do it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of scripts, so you guys you're right now making Looky-Loo too.
Yeah.
Can I ask you at a screenwriting level, when did you decide that Looky-Loo should be a trilogy? And how did that affect the writing of, if not Looky-Loo 1, how did that affect Looky-Loo 2 when that became the kind of middle of a trilogy rather than just a sequel?
Well, I don't remember a specific time, but it almost feels like we always planned on it being a trilogy. We definitely knew that, like, part 1 doesn't even have a plot, really. Like there's like a loose semblance of a story, but it's not overt. You have to kind of really pay attention. You almost have to do like a forensic examination of the film to figure out what happened. So we wanted to show his character develop, but we knew, like, so we've talked about part 1 being kind of an origin story. Part 2, it's definitely things ramp up significantly, but he's better at his work as a filmmaker and as a serial killer. And I don't want to reveal too much for part 3, but it's definitely like it follows it to its logical conclusion.
He's still looking and he's still louing.
Yes, yeah, he's looking.
That's all you'll give away.
He's louing. Yeah, that's right.
That's right. But that has to affect a little, because again, the first one you said was kind of this these bullet point ideas of this is something I want to see in the movie, right? And figuring out how to take those fractals and get a whole out of it, right? What does it feel like when you, and again, a movie that you guys have made, this kind of small independent film, a lot of people may find Looky-Loo 2 before they find Looky-Loo, right? So how did you adjust for this, knowing that this is its own thing? It could be the first thing, but it is this connective tissue between the origin and the finale.
Yeah. So part 2 has a screenplay. Like it's a short screenplay, but it's about like 50 pages or something like that. And within that screenplay, most of I would say probably like, a big piece of that pie is, he's constantly listening to, podcasts and radio, news radio and, TV bulletins about his own crimes, and about his own crimes in the first film, so you could start with part 2 because you're going to get the entire story, warts and all, of part 1 just by listening as you're going through with part 2. You'll kind of get the idea. Really so that was something that we looked for. In part 1, we didn't really have that option. We hear him like listening to music sometimes, but for the most part, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows that he's, and he hasn't. This film isn't in the world, So it's, I think, by making it a sort of really like meta piece, that kind of allows us to let people kind of jump in halfway through if they want to. I also have a feeling, I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling that watching part 2 and then going back and watching part 1 will make part 1 probably more satisfying.
Yeah, I was actually wondering that too as you were thinking, because to your point, part 1 is kind of just flashes of this guy, where he's at in the moment and how he's treating his victims, right? I do think there's something interesting about then exploring that and then going back and bringing that extra kind of mindset into the first one. Because it will inherently just fill the void in the audience's mind as they don't have enough information on him. Yeah. I think that's awesome, man. All right, so I think, like me, you also started out doing a lot of comedy stuff, right? Yeah, so I kind of started the same way. My big goal was to be on SNL.
Okay.
And then did some like UCB and shit like that when I got to LA. I always thought comedy would be the thing. Heath actually was doing a comedy YouTube channel too, which is kind of how we reconnected.
Yeah, okay.
So what do you think you took from your comedy days that have helped in the horror genre?
Well, comedy and horror have kind of the same bones, don't they? When you're...
Yeah, mechanically,
and I would say the other thing that horror and comedy have in common is that they're both really fertile tools for social commentary, which is a big thing for me. I mean, I think the best comedy has usually a really dark point of some kind. And that's just me. That's not like but that's my opinion. Is the comedy that resonates the most with me. Usually, there's something dark about it. Even goofball comedies, like I'd use Dumb and Dumber as an example. I love Dumb and Dumber. It's a great movie. But to Harry and Lloyd, what you're watching is like a really intense drama. They're living through this horrible set of circumstances, and people are kind of pieces of shit. So we can sit on the outside and we can laugh at these two, mentally disabled men as they try to make their way across.
And people just being like, "Ew, why are you in my space?"
But that's a part of what made that film so effective. And why Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels are incredibly talented. Incredibly talented actors. That's his name, right? Jeff Daniels. I haven't seen him in anything.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like,
since the newsroom left. He's been on hiatus. I think.
Yeah. Nolan, I think that's an interesting point that I haven't really thought of, or maybe consciously, because you often hear about comedy in horror. There are plenty of examples of a horror comedy, horror first, then comedy. Scream is maybe one of the best examples, but there are plenty. But I think you're right about comedy having the best comedies have a lot of subversive darkness in them. It's that kind of thing. What makes comedy work is that there's something outside of the expectation or outside of the polite societal norms that you're going to be presented with, and usually that comes up very dark.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's what it is, right? Is it's a set something up and then look over here.
Yep.
Horror and comedy both do that a lot, right?
Yep.
The punchline or the
Yep.
kill. It's funny because I remember a guy I was talking to, a friend of mine who's a screenwriter, and his wife's a screenwriter. They were both on the blacklist.
Yeah.
And she was kind of like, yeah, it's cool, I guess. I was like, you made the fucking blacklist. That's incredible. Yeah. And, you know, she was just kind of saying how she always wanted to write comedies, but her agents are like, oh, you're too happy and well-adjusted. That'll never happen for you.
Yeah.
You should write horror movies. And then she became successful writing horror movies, right? Because she was a happy, normal person. And I kind of thought about it. I was like, this seems fucked up. And the older I get and the more writers I meet, I was like, oh, I kind of see it, right? Like, I don't know anyone who writes great comedies that seems anywhat happy to me at all.
No, oh no, they're miserable people. Yeah, we're miserable.
Yeah, it does feel that.
Yeah. Life sucks, man.
But we need people who think everything sucks so they can break it apart for us and find the fucking fun.
Absolutely.
It's the Larry David paradox, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Love him on the show. Doubt I would want to be anywhere near him.
Oh yeah. In
any kind of a setting.
Yeah, he would be miserable to be around, but he's brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, he's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I would be around him, but I would probably I'd be like, okay, bye, after a little while.
Yeah, you know? Well, I heard Seinfeld talk about that once. He's like, all I'm doing at all times is working on material. Yeah. And I was like, God, the stress of just like being at a Hooters with that guy.
I know.
Right? And like every single thing you do, you're like, fuck, I'm going to get in the act. Like I'm being judged constantly and broken down.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to eat these shitty wings, dude.
Yeah. That's hard, though. That's hard. I don't know. Maybe that is something I should think about. I do have a hard time turning it off sometimes. I feel like I always have something, and now it's blood and guts kind of in my head, thinking about, you know, a great idea, or, you know, the story that I'm working on, or it is hard to turn it off. I don't know. It's important, though.
Yes. So I don't know if you go through this, but my biggest hassle as a screenwriter is anytime I'm tired and I'm like, I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch a show, I get such fucking guilt about, you lazy piece of shit. You should be writing right now all the time. It's like, dude, I have nothing left to give. Yeah. My brain's not, but that's like, I'll be having a great moment like with my kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, it's been 20 minutes, dude. It's bad. It's time. And you're like, dude, you can't function like that all the time. But I think that's the curse.
Yes.
Because with, you know, like if you're like a cameraman or something, right? You can't really do that much unless you're on set. But with the writer, our currency is time put in.
Yeah.
And so you feel like, if I just give unlimited, this is all going to work out great and immediately.
Yeah. It's very important to find a balance and find a way to just like sort of force to shut it off. You know, like I could have probably talked to you guys earlier in the day if I wanted to, but you know, it's now sort of the end of the day and my kids are going to bed and everything's, you know, so I do tend to, I do think it's important to kind of, force yourself, but I definitely understand what you're saying. Like, there are so many times when it's like, man, all I want to do is just sit down and work on something, or I'm having these ideas. And but it's more important. It's more important to take care of your kids. it's been
well, someday they're going to be grown-ups, and it's like, how much therapy do I want to pay for?
They might be, you know what?
I'm going to be there a little bit while I can.
They might be writers as well. You don't know yet. You know what I mean?
God, I hope not. I've turned fully into my parents. I'm like, get a real job. Go do like a hard-earned skill that like we can't replace with AI. Like, please, God, don't be into the arts. That's a hobby. Like, that's what I wish they would have told me at film school.
Yeah.
Go get a job that'll make you a millionaire, like insurance or plastic surgery, whatever. Yeah. And then just pay to make your fucking awesome movie ideas.
But, you know,
like, that's the thing they don't tell you in film school, is if you just become rich, all of this would be so much easier.
Yeah, but then you're spending all your time making money and you're not developing your art. And then you can't make
I would also say that does kind of bring me to sort of like the thesis that we were trying to prove with Looky-Loo. There's so much gatekeeping. I think the fact that Looky-Loo, I'm not going to like, you know, it's done pretty well considering, you know, considering its beginnings, considering its budget.
Absolutely.
You know, you can be effective without a huge budget. You don't need $100,000. You don't need $10,000. If you take stock of what resources you have, let's say, someone that's a good actor, or there's a community theater up the street, or you have access to like a kind of a cool location, you can craft your project to those resources and really make something effective. So yeah, the gatekeeping thing, like that's real. That's very real, but you can bite your thumb at it. You don't let that stop you.
Sure. Yeah. And to your point, the more clever and responsible you are with how you allocate resources, makes it easier to see that pay off, right?
Yeah.
If you put a shitload of money down and then you slam face first into that gate, that's where people get in big trouble, I feel like.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm with you on that. So you and Heath have been developing a script, right? Do you guys have any updates or details you want to lay out about that script? What do you hate about working with Heath? Let's just us have that talk.
You guys go ahead. I'll mute myself.
Yeah, Heath, go take a $5.
I love working with Heath. Heath, I think, is among, if not the best, like note giver for a script. Like if I send him pages,
definitely the longest amount of notes.
Yeah, but I love it. I love it because there's no note that he's ever given me that isn't like thoughtful in some way, or it doesn't tie to, and he's given me some big notes. You know what I mean? Like notes that potentially require me to think about, changing some things and making me do stuff.
I hate when he makes me do stuff.
I will say I have it very easy because this was a full screenplay that Nolan already had developed. So I'm just coming in and saying, "Oh, what do you think about doing this or that?" Well, I'm on easy street.
Well, yes,
the fucking barnacle that is Heath, dude. Unbelievable.
I'll tell you though, like the sort of that does sort of speak to a writing partner, like how much they bring to the table, because I will say that like the new version of that story is just miles and miles better than the original draft. I spent a lot of years, I didn't know any filmmakers, so I just wrote screenplays with no plan to do anything with them.
Dude, isn't that the saddest point of any writer's thing? Because me and my buddy used to have that joke. It's like we're just writing these to fill up the hard drives we've bought.
Yeah,
and it's like,
that lasted until I was about 30. You know what I mean? From like 15 to 30, I was writing screenplays. Absolutely nowhere to put them. Like what am I doing? I don't know. And I did. I don't know. I think it's nice when you find somebody that you can work with. Hold on to them. Don't let them go. Jason.
That's what I tell my wife all the time. Shape up.
That's right.
Appreciate me.
Don't let you go.
Appreciate what I'm bringing to the goddamn table.
That's right.
Yeah. You want to be out here on these apps? Have you seen it out here?
Right.
It's horrible.
Yeah. How many TikTok followers?
We've actually been watching Love on the Spectrum, and she's like, dating seems horrible. And I'm like, that's right.
It does.
That's right. I always throw a little one in, and she just gives me the death stare, and that's our love language.
There you go. Like Jason's never going to get rid of me. He's never going to get rid of me.
Nice. Hell yeah, you're in the gang.
Yeah.
If you really want long fucking insane notes, hit us up, dude.
Hell yeah.
My writing partner, John, gives the wildest notes you've ever seen.
I'd love to work with you guys. I'd love to work with you guys.
Oh, dude. If you want to really get into the shit, my buddy John, he always is like, this reminds me of this village in Africa where they farm using the bees as tools. And I'm like, what does that have to do with our penis script? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. But that's, sometimes that is very important.
I'm into it.
I fucking hope he hears this too, because he'll know I'm right.
Yeah.
He'll be mad at me, but he knows I'm right.
I just have to say, I have tried to write many, many screenplays. And I have written, I guess you could call them screenplays. They are documents that exist.
You've written,
that have pages. But I am just amazed and impressed, having worked with both of you now, how you're able to do what you do, because it is a true skill. It's really hard, and you make it look effortless. And and just the actual prose too. Like, it's fun to work with two different writers and their different styles. Like, Griffey is such a let's just get the idea out,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And maybe you're like that too, Nolan. We haven't worked together quite enough yet, but the pages that I see that Nolan provide, they're just, they feel like fully baked, you know.
Are we supposed to fight? Who's better?
No, no, no,
what
no.
Are we, Nolan, that's
no,
it.
no,
Now we have
your ideas are great. I'm talking about the actual, like, the writing, the prose of it.
He's a better writer, but I get to
poetry.
it quicker. That's what.
The point is,
oh, you're both great.
Griffey and I are.
But Griffey, when you finally get down to, you know, crafting the words, it's absolutely beautiful too. And I don't know. I just, to get to that point, no matter how many drafts it takes, I could never do it. And I'm just amazed that you guys.
Again, actually, having read some of your scripts, I think what you do really well as a writer is you're really good at the kind of machinations of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I think one of the hardest things, I don't know if I'm speaking for Nolan too, you can address this as well. Again, I think one of the easiest things I hear from people, because you know, everyone, if they know you write, they're like, I've got a fucking movie idea for you. And you would be shocked, because I always hear people bitch about that. I'm like, you would be shocked how many people tell me that. And I'm like, yeah, that would be a movie. Yep. Like, that's a perfectly fine movie I would probably rent. Yep. But that's the thing. It's not that bad to come up with an idea or like put some people in a setting. That part, I think, is the fun part of it, right? The real commitment is how much are you willing to, with no money, an unlimited amount of time of writing ahead of you, really dig into what extra is there, right? What is the unspoken spoken? And I think that's everything we've ever written, the more we commit to that, the better the script is. Yeah. And the more we get sick of that, the worse the script is, I find.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I don't really have... I don't know if I have anything to add. Although I will say that a lot of times when people bring me their movie idea, it's probably about 50%. 50% of the time, it's something where
I might have oversold it. I was saying I assume none of them would be good, but you're like, at least half of them are pretty good.
Half of them are decent, and they could go somewhere. And then half of them are, I'm just like, have you ever seen a movie? Do you?
Yeah. Well, my son always does, like, what if it's basketball, but every time you miss a shot, one of your players dies? I was like, that's Escape from L.A.
Yeah.
We should watch that movie now.
Yeah.
Snake Plissken did that.
I'm feeling like Death Race 2000, like...
Yeah, exactly. He's just his new thing is because we stay up every weekend night and we have a one slumber party night where we all sleep on the couch and stay up as late as we can watching horror movies. And the next morning he's just like, what if it's this sport, but people die? And I was like, I'm into it. Like, I would watch all of them. The sports genre is definitely untapped in the horror market.
Baseball with a bomb instead of a ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of the audience dying of boredom, literal murders. That's how you get the ratings back up.
All
right. Nolan, I want to ask you this. I think me and you might, or this is like a Step Brothers thing. Are we best friends now?
We might be.
You also act.
Yeah.
I act. Yeah. How do you find that affects your writing process? What are pros and cons that you think actors bring into the screenwriting?
So I think a lot of it, and I'm ashamed to even say it because I find improv really cringy, but a lot of times I'm doing improv.
Yes.
A lot of times.
Okay. So I used to do improv and it is so unbearable. I always laugh because even though I did it and I like the exercise of it, the thought that people watch that is horrifying to me, right? And I always remember that joke from 21 Jump Street, I think, where Channing Tatum's like, that was really funny. Did you guys just come up with that? And they're like, yeah, we make everything up on the fly. He's like, what would be awesome is if you guys wrote it ahead of time and practice it to be even better. And that's like, I think that is just such a perfect summation.
I would assume to do improv, you have to be a writer. You're writing as you're acting. You're doing it all at the same time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's like role playing. So I probably sound like a lunatic too when especially when I'm doing revisions. But really, like, I'll say I speak all of the dialogue because if it sounds unnatural the way I'm saying it, I'm like, no, I got to tweak that. How would I say that? And sometimes I do that in my head, and sometimes I'm just talking to myself alone in a room, but it's fine. I think that being an actor is extremely helpful as a writer. I think that really anybody involved in directors, writers, should learn something about acting. You know what I mean? They should really, really know acting, because I feel like that really informs every aspect of those disciplines. You know what I mean? And I'm surprised how many directors and writers I've met that like would never even consider being a like.
Well, I think a lot of people get into those because they're scared to be in front of the camera. It's a scary. I don't know about you. Every time I act, I still get fucking terrified. Like I still get the nervousness before, and you're all jazzed up.
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of people don't do it because of that fear.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that being able to understand what the actor's trying to do.
Yep.
I think, at least for me, I've always found it helps me in those script moments.
Mm-hmm.
Try to find that extra bit that's going to key them into what we're going for.
Yeah, well, and
right? Even if they don't get it, we want to try to put that in.
Yeah, and understanding a character's goals and their stakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hated acting school. Like I hated studying theater. That was the worst. But I did learn something, you know, and I learned something that I'm carrying with me, you know, and yeah, so understanding kind of what's going on in every character's head, that's an important thing for a writer to be able to do. And a lot of times it makes the writing a lot easier because I know this character wouldn't do this, you know, that creates conflict, that creates so many different things. So yeah, no, it's critical. I think at least for me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, to your point, I'm surprised how many times when we're doing our tandem pass where we both write at the same time.
Yeah.
We're just like, we got fucking nothing, and we just start spitballing. And essentially, we're just being jackasses trying to make ourselves laugh.
Yeah.
And you'll say, like, that one thing or that one phrase, and you're like, holy shit, that's exactly what this guy would be doing. And then that becomes the key that, like, kind of unlocks the revision.
That's awesome.
Is you find that voice, right? And you're like, oh, now I've had beers with this guy. Now I understand this character.
Yeah.
Right? And that happens all the time. Just those weird little moments of energy.
Yeah.
We're like, we love this. We're laughing. That's probably, we're on the path now, right?
Hell yeah.
So I'm with you, man. I think it is very helpful, too. All right. If Hollywood comes to you after the massive success of the Looky-Loo trilogy, the Black House franchise is rolling, Better Halves is on number 5.
Yeah.
What would be the dream project?
Oh man, you know, somebody asked me about this, and I gave a bullshit answer, because I couldn't.
Fuck those guys. They didn't deserve the good stuff.
I would love to do. To be honest, I would love to do a. I'd love to do a body horror film with Sarah Squirm, from Saturday Night Live. Sarah Sherman.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll never take me out of the sort of the sort of bizarre sort of punk rock headspace that I'm in. So like,
I love her as a performer. I think
so
she's
much.
just one of the best.
I have a friend who, he's like actually like they're friends. They've known each other forever, and they're both artists out of Chicago. And I'm like, I never get starstruck or anything, but I'm like quietly jealous. Like it's stupid, but like I'm just like,
dude,
I
just come up
her.
with the most incredible fucking idea ever and have him fucking torpedo.
Yeah, like no, I would love to work. I would love to work with her on like a body horror sort of like trauma.
That would be
even more
perfect
acid
for her
kind of project.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's do trauma, but with more acid.
Yeah, that always reminds me. I'm sure I've said it on the pod, but my friend once described his band as AC/DC, but manlier sounding.
Wow.
And I was like, is it just explosion sounds? What are we talking about here? Like, what the fuck are you
There's just a little more baritone and the screeching of the singer.
Yeah. You know, that kind of Puss the View music, AC/DC. Yeah. What are you talking about? What is happening here?
AC/DC is like...
Okay. So... aspiring screenwriting advice. So our hope is that people who are trying to do what we're all trying to do, right? They listen to this, or people who haven't started that yet and are afraid, but we're helping them hear from other people that it is possible, man.
Yep.
If you were to talk to a person they have the idea, they want to get going, but they don't know how to approach untangling kind of the vast amount of information of how to write screenplays, right?
Yeah.
If you could give your best piece of advice you picked up on your journey, or a tool that you like, a book, anything like that, what would you offer to the person about to take their first step?
Read screenplays. Find your favorite movies, find the screenplay, and read it, and read it, and read it, and read it. I've read Raising Arizona like 1,000 times. I loved that movie so much that like I bought the script, and I read it and read it and read it. I have a very well thumbed copy of that, because it's nice to be able to see, and it's nice to be able to see that. And also part of what I noticed is that like there isn't always the more screenplays you spot like sort of the differences. You spot that like you can break rules. There's not
right
these sort of by the number screenplays. Like you can do that and that's fine, but if you really want to make something special, I think the most important thing you can do is read the work of the people that you respect. Read their screenplays.
It's like the anti-Sid Field.
Dude, like, I'm telling you, I had a guy I used to work for. I was a screenplay analyst, and he told me, he's like, kid, I don't even know why I just made it. It was actually a lady, right? I was just trying to protect her identity, but she won't fucking hear this. But she told me, she's like, when you go home every day, right? Because I would work as her assistant all day for free as an intern. And then I would go home and try to eat and let my dog out, and I would go bounce all night. And she's like, when you're on the stool as a bouncer, she's like, sit and read screenplays. And then she's like, the ones you like, go home and just, without even thinking, just retype them out. And she's like, by doing that, your body will start to get this mechanical trigger of when to cut to action to dialogue. Like, when do we need a line here? When are we doing so much dialogue? We got to get an action in here to like. So your body will start to pick up that kind of muscle memory of the pacing of good scripts. And I thought that was kind of a bullshit thing at the start, but it is something I weirdly do. Like, a lot of times I find myself completely stuck. Like, starting my writing session is always the hardest. And I still do that sometimes. I'll just start fucking copying a scene. And then you start adding a joke in or changing a word, and then you're writing. And that helps a lot.
And I think it will, and that speaks to also the importance of experimentation. I'd read, I can't remember who said it, but it was just like, well, if you have an idea for a scene and it's in the middle of the movie, just write that fucking scene. Just write that scene. Who cares? Maybe, and another, I was so intrigued by this idea that I went and I bought a stack of index cards. They were like, just write a scene on every index card, and that's your, you can make that into your movie. I was like, okay. I'll try it. I'll try that. Sure.
I think it was Kubrick said that once, and I think David Lynch was also in
this.
He's like, all you got to do is fill out like 70 index cards.
It was probably David Lynch. Probably I read it well. But I was like, that's a brilliant idea. And I think and I guess, specifically with something like Looky-Loo, the advice that I kind of took was from Harmony Korine. Said, basically, like, life doesn't have a plot. Real life doesn't have a plot. So, struggling to sort of break every single rule. It's okay. It's okay to do that too. I feel like I'd done my 15 years writing these different scripts, and now it's like,
I've been a good company, man.
You know what?
I've
You're
had
right.
enough.
Fuck all of just throw it all on the floor. And
you're fucking Edward Norton in that scene in Fight Club. Just beat the shit.
I was like, okay, well, I know enough now that I can ignore everything that I ever learned.
I mean, who fucking knew Sharknado would blow it? Like, there's no fucking rhyme or reason to any of this, right? Things just, if you love it enough, hopefully audiences will find it and the love will spread. I don't know if there's a better way. I used to work with other screenplay assistants, and I was like one of the guys reading. I don't know if I was supposed to, or I just got hired by a writer who was just being a dick. Sure. But like the final draft screenwriting contest, I was one of the guys like saying yes or no. And the guy would just give me wine. That was like our trade-off. And again, he would be so stoked. He's like, oh yes, this one's like, black background and blue font. I'm deleting it. And I was like, you didn't even, like, what if? What if that happens to be good? He's like, well, it's not formatted right. And I was like, oh my, that's my least favorite thing that a lot of old Hollywood people love to do. Formatting error, dude. Or like sentence structure. It's like, we're not writing fucking theses.
Well, they change the rules all the time too. I got dinged on mores and continueds, which I was always told you're supposed to have those and you're supposed to have the scene numbers in there. They're like, no, you're never supposed to have. I was like, well, I don't know.
And by the way, that's definitely the one part the audience will never see.
They don't give a shit.
They'll never fucking
they don't care.
And again, that was like a thing when I was younger too. It's like, don't ever try to be funny in the script. Just write exactly what we see. And now the Blacklist has changed that. Now we're all like, you know what? Let's make our writing fun. God forbid a person enjoy reading a screenplay, and we put some flourishes in there.
That was what's his name? Shane Black.
Yeah.
He was one of the first guys to really do that, and then everybody followed suit.
Yep.
And
I remember the first time
better.
I read Pulp Fiction, I was like, "Holy shit! You can just like fucking write funny ass jokes and references."
Yeah,
and it like blew my fucking mind.
Yeah, fantastic screenplay. Fantastic screenplay. Broke a lot of rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But see, now we're almost in a cycle now where scripts are like too blacklisted.
Yeah.
That we almost have to come back. So it is cyclical, man. But I think if you're not enjoying the writing, it's hard to imagine anyone else will enjoy reading it. It's kind of how I've always come down on it. I'm also not a successful screenwriter. I just do it a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just my 2
Although
cents.
maybe we need to accept that we are successful screenwriters, and this is what it looks like.
Okay, now you're sounding like my buddy. Every day, pat yourself on the back that you have confronted the tyranny of the blank page. And I was like, all right, dude, that's cool too.
I don't know.
Nolan, you are a successful screenwriter. You have a feature film that's out into the world. It's fantastic.
That's right.
So, Griffey, you still have work to do.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. See, this is one of those great Heath criticisms we live for. Yeah,
I really like the script, though. I read the script. I love it. So, you
read Mr. Cream Cheese Tiny Hole?
I did. Yeah.
I don't think you
cover to cover,
and you don't have the final draft yet.
No, I don't think I've read any subsequent drafts, but no, I really enjoyed it, and I even had some highbrow sort of. I was talking about like Roman theater, and how. It was a lot. I was like,
that's right. I was like,
you gotta say that on one of our writers. My buddy John would love to hear.
Yeah, I was like, I like how it's not as like lowbrow as you might think it's going to be with the title. Like it's
okay. So that was what I told Heath. I was like, my biggest fear is how little like sex and tits are in it, right? No. Like it's kind of like a sex comedy that's the least sexed movie of all time.
Yeah, no, I like how it's your work is very sex positive. It's
that was one of our goals.
There's it's slutty but without a negative connotation or without a judgmental connotation, but it's also not it's not objectifying in any, you know what I mean? At least on the page, the way I was reading it, I was like, no, this seems pretty legit.
Yeah, so any objectification and not positivity comes from Heath's direction.
That's my fault.
Mark that down.
No, I mean the script that I'm working with Heath Blackhouse, there's more like sex and nudity and eroticism in that screenplay than
it's a very sexy movie
I have ever put in anything. And I would argue that I would say that it's also not objectifying in any way, and I would say that a lot of it is in how like not sexy it is. Kind of
Well, this is kind of my great theory. I was like, the most important thing in our world is sex, and it's also just objectively like the dumbest any of us ever look.
Yeah.
We do the dumbest things to get sex. Like I just think it's like the fulcrum of everything good and bad in the world. And you should just have fun.
Yeah,
with that,
no, I actually I'm a fan of your work. I've only read one script, but I'm a fan of your work, and I'd love to work with you guys. I think that what you're doing is great, and I think you will be. I think you will be a success.
We need thanks.
We need a series.
I'm going to send this to my father tonight.
We need to get a writer's room
Griffey's
going.
dad?
Oh, dude, that would be the dream.
Wrong. You were wrong. He's a huge success.
Yeah, I made it. Some guy on my podcast said I was.
That's right.
He'll be like, what the fuck's a podcast? No, well, thanks, Nolan, for making the time, man. We wish you all the luck with Looky-Loo and Looky-Loo 2 in production.
Hell yeah.
Would you like to tell everyone again where they can find you online so they can keep up with you as all the projects start rolling out?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Order of the Jackalope, and I'm on TikTok. I don't know how to use it yet, but I'm on TikTok at Modern Trevant. But yeah, I'm a fairly approachable guy still. So you can track me down.
Give it time. You
can track me down if you wanted to pretty easily, I think. Yeah. So
oh, beautiful, man.
Yeah, reach out.
Well, thank you. If you ever want to come back and just talk about a movie,
I'd love to.
Let us know, man. You'll always be welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for making the time, guys. Go follow Nolan. Support the Looky-Loo universe as it grows, and we will see you guys Monday for another new movie